Well, we're here, everyone. It's a big day. For many reasons, we have an incredible guest. I'm going to introduce her, but hi. This is our very first YouTube released Raw Onion episode. It is June 1st, 2026. We are here. We welcome you. We are so happy to finally be making this step because we kind of figured, you know what? People like to listen to the guests, to us, to the stories. But nobody's seeing anyone. And we're lacking in connection today as it is, right? So we figured, let's take the leap. It's a big one, but it's important because now we have this, right? So I will apologize in advance. This is my first time. Yoshi is an expert in the back, as you know, but I am Stephanie Ohanessian, your host of the Raw Onion podcast. And we're going to be doing this different, and we chose a guest today that I could not be, and Yoshi could not be more excited to have on. You can see her right here, this beautiful face.
Hi, everybody.
And I'm going to just read a little bit here of the bio because we need to know who we're dealing with today in the best possible way. You know, and there's this particular kind of clarity. And this is sort of what our new theme is for the month of June. Just to set it up, it is women in business. Women in business in all types of ways. Women in business at the top, women in business working their way up, women in business realizing that maybe they don't want to be in that business, right? There's a million different ways, as per Raw Onion, to peel back the emotional reality, the perspective of women in business and where we want to take it, right? So there's a clarity that comes when a decision gets made for you, when a job ends, when a door closes, when an opportunity comes to a crossroads. The wheel you've been running on just sort of stops for whatever reason. And in that sudden stillness, you can finally hear the thing that you've been too busy to listen to, right? And today we're calling it what it is. It's not a setback by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a failure. It's almost a forcible reintroduction to yourself. So let's peel this back with our guest, Renee Coover. Renee is the founder of Engage Law, where she serves as fractional outside general counsel to a small, growing group of businesses, very powerful businesses, providing strategic legal guidance on employment, regulatory, and operational matters. She most recently served as general counsel for Advanced Med Aesthetic Partners, AMP, a private equity-backed medical aesthetic healthcare platform with more than 500 employees. In that role, she advised executive leadership on the board of directors, on compliance, employee strategy, business operations, real estate transactions, and outside counsel management. She was recognized as an Illinois super lawyer from 2016 through 2023, an honor awarded to only a small percentage of attorneys in the state. So today, through Engage Law, Renee partners with business owners as a trusted advisor, delivering sophisticated, practical legal guidance tailored to their goals without the overhead of a traditional law firm. So behind and beyond her professional life, obviously, this is important too, Renee is a devoted wife and mother of two, as well as a proud pet parent to a Bernedoodle. I have to ask what a Bernedoodle is. I think I might need to cuddle with one immediately. Named in honor of, this is my favorite, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Absolutely. And she is also a certified core power yoga instructor and an avid baker and the queen of carpool. So, Renee, there is a lot to highlight, a lot to celebrate here, and most notably, the honor is ours to have you on today. So we wanted to bring you on. Please introduce yourself to our incredible listeners and welcome to the Raw Onion.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Yoshi. I am so happy to be here. It is truly an honor for me to be here with you today. And we had such a beautiful conversation when we were planning this out, and I am just really excited to just get to the real peel back that onion and really get
Let's bring
down
it,
to it.
girl. Yes. There's a lot to peel back, and for listeners, we have chatted with Renee in depth before, and we really wanted to chat and see what is your story, because that's what we do here. And Renee's was one of really what encapsulates an entire experience of females in the workplace, but not only that, females in an incredibly competitive, incredibly high pressure workplace. So, Renee, take us back a few years as this theme is unfolding here with women in business. Why did you want to come on here to peel back? Tell us your story. Tell us how it started, and just
Yeah.
give us a little bit about your background, because it is beyond impressive here.
Well, thank you. Well, funnily, I mean, I will say I had never had a dream or a vision of owning my own legal practice. I had practiced law for close to 17 years. I started out in the firm life and I worked for a small firm, kind of worked my way up into, the big law world, working for an insurance defense firm. And we did a lot of different employment work and defense work. And for a period of time, I was a trial attorney. So I was doing federal trials and really some of them on the plaintiff side, some of them on the defense. And so it was a very high stress, toxic world. And I had my first son, Liam, in 2016. And I will never forget, I was set to go to a federal trial in Rockford, Illinois, the week that I came back from my maternity leave. And while I had been on my maternity leave, I had given a whole TED talk about maternity rights and pregnancy rights and all of these things that we need to really appreciate in the workplace, and that we don't have in our country, which is shocking to a lot of people that our rights are a lot more stifled than they are in other countries. But I came back from that maternity leave and was set for this trial, and I was trying my best to breastfeed my son at the time, but pumping at work and all of these things, and I would sit at my desk and pump milk for like 45 minutes, and I would look down and realize I had half an ounce. And my body was just giving out on me. It was responding to the stress. And when I had approached the female attorney that was in charge of that trial, I said, I'm going to have to somehow FedEx my milk back to home so I can give my son milk while we're at this trial, because I'm staying at the trial for 2 weeks. And I'll never forget, she looked at me and said, "You don't need to breastfeed your son. He can use formula and he'll turn out just fine." And I thought, wow, that was the moment in time where I thought, this is not going to work for me anymore. If this is how we treat females in the workplace, I knew that it was not a good fit for me. So from there, I made a shift to transactional law. I went into a law firm that was much more boutique style. And I worked my way up to a partner of that firm. And it was based out of Dallas, so I would fly back and forth from Dallas. And at first, for the first few years, it was a great fit. I loved the partners, I loved the people. And after a while, it just, things in life change and shift. And I had another child during that time, my daughter. And so it got to be, more and more a realization that it was just hard. It was hard to be a full-time working mom, have a husband who was working full time, take the, train to my satellite office every day and try to get home and make dinner. And so eventually, I was getting to this point where I just thought, I don't know if I want to practice law anymore. Like, this is just too hard for me. And even with the accommodations of, being remote and having a lot of my own oversight as a partner, it just still felt like the client demands could be really strenuous at times. And so I started looking for ways to escape, basically,
Yep.
and kind of thought, you know what, maybe I shouldn't practice law anymore. And at the time, I was seeing a therapist, and I remember telling her, my whole identity is wrapped into being an attorney. Like, that is what I have known in my entire adult life, myself as an attorney. And I said to her, what will my kids think if I just leave this practice of law and I'm not an attorney anymore? Like, they won't be proud of me. They won't see that I worked so hard and I was an attorney for so long. And she said to me, Renee, do you want them to see you as an attorney or do you want them to see you as happy? And that comment really shifted my entire perspective of what it meant, to be a woman in the workplace and like find I won't even say the word balance because I know everyone has overused that word of balance, but
Yeah.
trying to just find something that works for you. And so it got me thinking like, maybe this job is not the best fit for me anymore. And I just need to move on.
So now there's are two really powerful moments here with between a career woman, that identity, right,
Yeah.
and a mother. Did either version of you, we all play different roles in life, right? Did one land differently in your body than the other? Let's say, somatically speaking, and this is a lot of times what we're interested in collectively when we start chatting is this sort of epiphany of we're not always making decisions from only our logic, right? And
Sure.
a lot of times when we do make decisions only from our logic, that's when we start to spiral out of control because we're not listening to the
To your
rest of
body.
our system and to our bodies. And oddly enough, and you know this, because you are such a versed expert in yoga as well, but that takes training too to kind of get the two talking. It's
Sure.
not an overnight thing, and frankly, we've been conditioned out of it, right? We've been conditioned to not listen to our
Right.
bodies.
Right.
So, let's say when the therapist had said happiness versus et cetera, how
Yeah.
did that land? Or what did you really get a sense of, "Oh, wow, the 2 versions of myself, feel physically different."
Yeah, I really could tell I was out of alignment during that whole period. Luckily, having a therapist to talk to, but talking to her every week, I would say I'm having a lot of stomach issues, ongoing stomach issues,
Yeah,
constantly IBS types of issues, but stomach issues. And I would have, weird symptoms like night sweats or headaches and all of these things where my body was screaming at me basically. And I wasn't realizing those signs were tied to how I was feeling so out of alignment between my body and my mind. And, you can get on medication and you can try, all of these different things to try to fix, or solve the problem. But at the end of the day, sometimes it has to be a shift in how you are living your life or what you are doing to take care of yourself. And I realized at that point I was really not taking care of myself. I thought I was. I was practicing yoga at the time. I
right,
was, taking my Sunday bath or
right.
whatever I was told is like self-care, right? We're all told self-care. But if you really don't feel in alignment, taking that bath on a Sunday is not gonna do it for you. So that's when I started to realize that in talking to her.
A lot of the times too, and I'm thinking of the term Sunday scaries, or was it, is it Sunday scaries, right?
Yes.
That and it's and now an actual term, and I believe it's even in the dictionary now because it's such a thing
Yeah.
that millions of people, myself included, not anymore because we changed the trajectory of our stories, right? But
Yeah.
it's still alive. It's alive and well. This dread, this overpowering dread of, oh boy, armor up, here we go. And really, then your
Sure.
weekend is shot because Saturday you have a moment where you're enjoying your family, you're catching up, you're running errands, and by Sunday, I think it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh no, oh no.
Yeah.
That is our wiring because we wanna endure, we wanna keep on trucking,
Sure.
but it's also our wiring in a lot of ancient programming too, and this is something that I nerd out on, and I'd love to hear a bit of your backstory in terms of, let's say, your familial background. Was it one of, yep, keep on going no matter what, let's keep the eye on the prize? Or, I mean, what was it like? Because this has so much to do with, even down to how our basic epigenetics works, right? We
Sure.
saw it, we're going to repeat it.
Yep.
Did that come into play at all at this moment where you're like, I'm here at the crossroads, I'm going to make some big decisions?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting you bring that up, thinking back in time because it all does relate back to
Yeah.
how how did I grow up? How did that affect my decision making as an adult? And I can say, I mean, I'm a true first child. Like, I was the
Yeah.
oldest of four. My brother's 3.5 years younger than me. And then my parents, surprisingly, had twins at when 8.5 years after I was born. So I was very much like a rigorous child. I was the helper. I think at one point, we would be out with my sisters in the stroller and my mom would introduce me as her little helper. And I really took on that identity as I have to be in charge of a lot of people here besides myself. And I really became, dedicated, serious. Like, if friends in high school were out partying, I was going through note cards at night, trying to make sure I was going to pass that exam. And so I think from an early age, I really felt like I had to work harder than maybe some other people did to just be almost enough, right? Like not even enough, but almost enough. It was like work, 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 work. And no matter what happens, just push, just keep going. And to the point where you start to run yourself ragged and you don't realize it because you're in my head that whole time. I was like, well, I'm aiming for a certain goal. And until I get there, I can't give up. Like, God forbid I give up, right? And whatever that means at the time. And I think that starts to change, the older you get too. Just what is success? But at the time, success to me was making partner, being on that track. And then when I got there, it's like you're at the top of the mountain and it can feel a little bit lonely. You've done everything you said you wanted to do, and then you're there and you're not as happy as you thought you were going to be after you've worked, 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 push, push, push. And here you are standing there and you feel lonelier than ever where you are. And so I think that was kind of the moment I got to when I was at the firm and really needed at that point to make a shift. But yeah, it was certainly probably a long history of,
Yeah.
being that way and feeling that I had to be the achiever in every single aspect of my life.
Well, was that a perception that you came to your own conclusions with when you were younger? Just this sort of the way that you grew up, and there again, we don't finger point or blame. There's nothing to finger point about, but just in terms of the status quo of what, let's say a goal being reached. And I'm that way too in a lot of ways that there's a goal and I will stop at nothing to get there, and then you really end up ignoring all of the little red flags along the way, which we
Yeah,
can both look back, and I'm sure many, many people can, "Oh, yeah, of course, this hindsight is 2020 kind of
sure.
concept," right? And then going back and saying, "Let me kind fix, at least try to now redo the second time
Yeah,
around what I hadn't really noticed the first time." And that's almost like a true versus perceived unhappiness, a true happiness versus the perceived unhappiness.
yeah,
And I would love you to talk a little because, especially here, women in business, and we're going to get to the next part of this
yeah,
story. But when we're on the brink of burnout or when we have this moment of, and you're right, it kind of, we need a little bit of maturity under our belt to even realize, wait a minute, this
sure.
isn't lining up with who I need to be, who I want to be.
Exactly.
Right. But what I love, and I'd love you to get into this, is this attempt, at least a very sincere attempt, to bring a bit of your essence, your sincere self to the workplace. And I mean that when you had mentioned in our conversation teaching or facilitating yoga at the
Yeah,
workplace. Now, that to me was really genius in an effort, right? Because there was a move that was made, action. We understand action is everything. We're not going to make
yeah.
any changes without action. What was the impetus to start to do that? And what did you get out of it? Did other people get anything out of it? And just tell the story. I don't want to give too much
Yeah.
away.
Well, so I will go back a little bit and say,
Yeah.
so after I left my firm, I ended up going to work as in-house counsel for, I think you had mentioned it, Advanced Mosaic Partners.
Yeah.
It was a private equity backed platform. And I was, the sole attorney managing 50 different medical practices across the country. And it was a job that I learned a lot in that job so quickly. I realized my strengths and what I could handle, but also there's a lot of challenges along the way. It was a true startup in every sense of the form, you know, very little processes, protocols, fly by the seat of your pants kind of job. And I was there 18 months. And in August of 2024, our entire executive team was let go in basically a week. And so my job, along with a lot of other people's, what was just instantly gone. And at the time, of course, it's that morning that you have where I had never been laid off before. I had never been terminated from a job. And so I was deeply hurt and felt all of those feelings of not good enough, not good enough, not good enough start to rise to the surface again. And at first I said, I'm just going to give myself this time off. I can't even look for another job right now. We were moving into a new house and my kids were starting school and it was like such a whirlwind of a time. But it got to, I think, November, and I had been going to core power yoga for years, taking the classes. And this one day, I'm coming out of a yoga class, and the instructor, Georgia, kind of grabbed me by the arm and she pulled me back and she said, Renee, there's a teacher training and it's starting next week, and you absolutely have to do it. And I thought, are you kidding me? Like, I have no desire to teach yoga. Like, I just want to be here and like get my hour of relaxation in before I go back to, wallowing in my sadness and trying to find a job, right?
Right.
And so at first the timing seemed bizarre, but I started thinking about it and I said, well, Georgia, I don't have a job right now. So you've kind of got me at a good time here. I do have some time on my hands. And kind of, I went home, I talked to my husband about it. I said, there's this training. It would be, a few days a week for the next 8 weeks. Like, I would need your help in some respects to take care of the kids those nights because I'm going to be out for the whole evening. And he was like, absolutely, do it. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made because in that moment, I so needed to feel like I could accomplish something, that I was good enough for something. And it was a period of time where I'm sure every person who's ever been let go from a job, no matter what the circumstances or the reason, there is a piece of you that feels hurt and kind of bruised. Your ego is bruised. And I had started looking for a new job and had not been finding anything and was starting to feel that sense of shame come on where you're like, okay, what if I don't find a job? What if, this doesn't work out? What if I'm never going to find another job? And you start to spiral and talk yourself out of things. And taking on that instructor program and becoming an instructor was a beautiful thing. I mean, now I get to spend a few hours a week teaching yoga to people who at the end of the class, I love seeing they'll rise up from their mats after Shavasana and everyone is just kind of resituating themselves and they're just happy. They have a smile on their face and they walk out and they're like, thank you so much for that hour. And so now not only is it an opportunity for me to bring some joy back into my life, but joy hopefully into other people's days as well. And it gave me that sense of confidence and encouragement that I really needed at that moment, which was definitely a low moment for me.
Well, I mean, this is interesting, right? Because essentially, we don't have to go into it, but I almost want to say the words divine timing in this,
Yeah,
right?
I
You had
agree. Fine time. I love that term.
it's there's something to it, and it's however people want to break that down. And I know there's a whole quantum theory around it, but there's something to it when things line up where your subconscious, it sounds like, almost made the decision that you knew you were done with big law,
Yeah,
and you knew that you were sort of tapped out in that on that path regardless. You've tried you at that point several iterations of it.
right.
So it's almost like you had already made that decision before the decision was made for you, right? It's
Totally. Yeah.
so being forced off a wheel, let's say, was not something completely out of your orbit that you were already
Yeah.
okay
But I
with.
love that you say force off the wheel because when I look back now, being let go from that position was the biggest gift they could have given me. And I remember a friend said to me, it was like a week after I'd been let go. And he said to me, Renee, they let you go. They did you a favor, they let you go. You were so unhappy there. It was not a good fit for you. You knew that from day 1, and you kept pushing through it. But they gave you that gift of letting you go. And of course, when you're in it, you may not see that for what it is. And then of course, hindsight, always 2020, but like afterwards I realized how unhappy I was in that job and how I did need to leave. And so finding that little piece of me back again, with the yoga, really, I needed that at that moment.
Well, and the fact that the timing again, right? It was
Yeah.
just, and I would invite anybody to just, when there's a moment of shock, I mean, really, whether you
Yeah.
secretly wanted to be let go or not, whatever that narrative is in somebody's head, it's still a sucker punch. It still hurts. It's happened to me. I agree. It was the best thing. And since we're talking about women in business, folks, it's your ego that's taking the punch. And it hurts. There's nothing wrong with saying that. It's, you put a lot of time in, you put a lot of effort and trying to manage and build and create a solid career. Even if it's not your dream scenario, it still really, really hurts. And
Yeah.
so the fact that there's another opportunity that kind of smoothly intersectioned in your life at that point, that's a little takeaway for all of us to kind of bookmark, right? That open your eyes a little wider when a big moment in life is happening. Pause and open, because we don't rest enough, right? We know that. We don't pause. We don't take in our surroundings, and we might be missing golden opportunities.
Sure.
And what you're sharing, it's almost a guarantee that something's going to come in when you're ready to actually receive something new, right?
I say all the time, I mean, nothing is static. We have a hurt moment, and our human tendency is to kind of wallow in it and just, you start to feel like this is never going to change. I've failed at this, or I've done this wrong. And just keeping in mind always that nothing is static, everything changes. And so the moment you focus on something, it changes. It's always temporary. Time is
Yeah.
moving so quickly. But having that ability to take in that moment when you are in that tough place and thinking of it as something, positive, or feeling that silver lining, it can be tough for sure. No one
Oh,
wants
yeah.
to hear like, look at the silver linings. but
No.
like, if you can, I called it my power pause, because after I was done feeling sorry for myself, I refused to sit with it. And I'd be out with someone and they say like, how's the job search going, or like something that could potentially trigger me. And I was not going to let that hurt me. And so I said, this is my power pause. I'm taking some time.
Beautiful.
I'm figuring things out. And it's not a sadness pause. It's not
Nope.
a shame pause. It's a purposeful pause where I'm reevaluating what the next step is. And that's okay. And everyone should take that and think about how powerful that can be. When you have that time, let that time be a gift in some way. Even if, it can be very difficult, but if there's some way you can find a gift in it and create that power in that pause, it truly is life changing.
That's so funny you say that. I share that, and it's a real science-backed exercise, and I call it "Whose voice is it?" To take
Oh,
it, I actually love your power pause much better. I love that term, but it's the same general concept of,
mm,
okay, there's a moment.
totally.
What am I going to do with it? Where's the opportunity, right?
Hmm.
But also, when someone is vacillating between what next move to make, it's a very, very important fork in the road for people to say, who's who's in here talking to me? Is it really, really me? Or is it my kids? Is it my husband? Is it my partner? Is it my family, my community? Talk about shame. What if I do this? What if people don't agree? What if? So
Everyone.
how did you discern? And I think that's a big word for this conversation, but how did you discern between, wait a minute, yes, I play multiple roles in life,
Hmm.
but what's the next step for me, for Renee? And
Yeah.
how did you know what did it again, I'm gonna go back and ask, did it feel different when when you linked into that, "Ooh, wait a minute, this is the move." Did it feel
Yeah.
different?
Yeah, I would say when well, for sure when I chose to go down that path of teaching yoga, that was something I had never expected. One, I never expected myself to be able to accomplish it because in my mind, I was not, cut out to be a yoga instructor. I was just cut out to be a person in the class who took the class. So I wasn't expecting that that would be my path. And when I sat with that and really thought about how it could change my trajectory, and I knew I needed something to focus on and change my perspective during that time, I had started meditating 2 to 3 minutes every morning. And I said, I have to find a way to hang on to this because it was really making a difference in my outlook for the rest of the day. And so doing the yoga and all and the meditation, all of that, like really changed how I felt about myself and gave me some more confidence. And, the decision to go on my own and start my own firm, it was kind of wild because even after I became a yoga instructor, I still had it in my mind that I had to find a real job, right? Like I had to find a full time
Isn't
job.
that funny?
Yeah, like, and all my friends
Right.
were like, "But aren't you a yoga instructor now?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but like I need another job that pays the bills." And so,
So interesting.
I actually had like gone on a retreat for a few days with some girlfriends, and I had set a very unrealistic expectation for myself that I was going to come back with a a decision on what I was going to do. Of course, that was unrealistic, and I even had told my husband, I'm like, "I'm gonna figure this out while I'm gone." Like, I know I'm taking this retreat, and I probably shouldn't be because I don't have a job right now, and I had signed on for this when I did have a job, and here I am, like, going off somewhere when I don't have work, and he's like, "No, you need this time. Take the time." And when I came back, I didn't have an epiphany moment while I was there. And so I was starting to think, okay, I guess I'm going to go back to the grind of trying to find a law firm job or going in house to another company. And I was standing around in the kitchen like 2 days after I had come back. And I was starting to, that sense of anxiousness and almost a sense of self pity was starting to rise to the surface of like, okay, I still haven't found something. Like, it's been 9 months. What do I do? What if I don't find something? And my husband looked at me and said, Renee, why don't you just hang your own shingle? Like, you've been doing this 17 years. You can just open your own practice. And it blew my mind because at the time I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want that risk. Like,
Risk. Okay, so that was so to you that so your own shingle to you at that moment equated with risk.
100%. Too much risk. I don't
Oh,
want to do it.
okay.
And it was interesting because all along, I mean, you think about as an attorney, you you have the backbone of the firm or the company. And so you feel a little bit encapsulated by the other people who are helping, hold you up. And so there doesn't feel like there's as much risk because you're not on your own. That moment you go on your own, it's like, well, it's all me. So if I'm not good enough,
Yep.
what happens, right? I fail. And so I think that's where I was really afraid of the risk, and I started to feel the fear lead me in my decision making. Well, I can't do it because I fear the risk. And when I
Fair.
sat back with it, I said to myself, well, I took the risk of going in house for to work for the other company. I was the only attorney, had never been in house counsel, really didn't feel like I knew what I was doing from day one, and managed to get through it and managed to find my strengths. And I'm like, if I could do that, why can't I just do that without the backbone of the company on my own? And so after some real life evaluation, I said, you know what? I think I can give this a try. Like, I'm going to do this. And what do I have to lose? I already wasn't making any money because I didn't have a job. So the
Right.
risk was lower financially because I was at zero, right? So I was like, well, if it doesn't make any money right away, I'm no worse off here. And I will say I had the benefit of my husband working. And so maybe 5 years ago, I would not have been able to make that same decision because we would not maybe have been in the same financial place where I could have taken off those extra months to figure out where I wanted to go. But I had that benefit at that moment of, okay, I'm going to take these next few months and figure out how to start my own practice and see if it can work.
You know, this idea of risk, right? And sort of betting on yourself. That's really such a cornerstone foundational in your face moment for any entrepreneur. I think it took me when I decided I wanted to start my own business 2 years before even the slightest move forward because I was terrified,
Mhm.
and for the same exact reason. It was, well, I'm good at working for someone else even though one time I got canned, and which was a whole wild thing, and the company actually ended up going under, but then I was so burned out by this other company that I had worked for, and I loved the job, I really did, but that's a story that, I ended up in the ER. So it's this weird perception of, am I actually supported anyway? If
Right.
I'm
Right.
this irony of what we're telling ourselves,
A
kind of
hundred.
like, this is a little, it's almost funny. It's almost comical in
Yeah.
what the stories we tell ourselves for this perception of safety.
You are 100% right. Yeah. I mean, when you boil it down, I mean, I probably was no safer with any of the companies I had been with because if I didn't have that voice in me, I mean, there was no other voices really outside either. So I, it does it takes sometimes losing one thing to gain another, and that was the situation. I really don't think I would have seen that side of myself and for what it is and been able to appreciate the fact that I have the experience, I can do this. I had to lose something
Yeah.
before I could really come to that, realization.
And have that moment. And I think that's where a lot of people panic. Rightfully so. There's no shade in that at all. It's a moment that you would panic. But
Yeah.
again, that pause, right? That power pause, that what now? And really reassessing and being clear about the reality of the situation. And a lot of times we paint the past in with rose-colored glasses, right? Oh, wasn't that lovely? Our brains are, we literally, this is how we're designed. We filter out the negative. We don't want to remember the bad stuff. Right?
Right.
So when you look at the highlight reel of your life, oh, well, wasn't that lovely? Maybe it was, but there were also a lot of really hard times that your body and brain are purposely sort of closing the door to.
Yeah.
And this moment of, well, actually, the risk might be worth it.
Right.
I'm betting on myself. That's a moment that cannot be underestimated because that's not just forced off a wheel. Now what? Might as well try. That's all very casual, but this is
Yeah.
something to be so incredibly proud of because you're really taking that initiative to rewire your brain and to shift into a whole new identity. And so you're taking all of that information and you're reorganizing it. And I want to ask you, did you understand the how profound this was in the moment? Or now that you have a little time behind you with your own firm, can you look back and say, you know what? What
Yeah.
good on me.
Right. Yeah, I don't think in the moment I realized the magnitude of it.
Yeah.
In truthfully, in that moment, it felt like a almost a necessity, right? I had to do this because I didn't have another option. In my brain, it was kind of like, well, I've tried this and I've tried that and it didn't work. So I'm going to give this a go. And I almost felt like, yes, I was taking on this new persona, but the risk was still in the back of my brain. And I still had a lot of self doubt when I made that decision. I thought, oh my gosh, what if this fails? And like, what do I tell people if it does? And so it took me a while to get comfortable with the idea of even telling people I was going to do this because I did still have some fear about what would they say? Would they be proud of me or would they say that's a terrible idea? Or would they say, how are you going to, afford to do that? What if you don't make any money? And so it took some time for me to realize I had made that decision. I had taken a situation that, from all accounts wasn't the best, not having a job and being laid off, and turned it upside down on its head. But it really wasn't until maybe 6 months in that I started to be able to look back and say, I really did something here. Like, I really took a step forward. And I think so often too, as women, we're just not wired the same way as men. And they have moments of confidence that I feel that sometimes that moment where they believe in themselves and they put themselves out there is the same moment we kind of step back and into the shadows and say, oh, I could never, I would never do that. Like,
The
there's just too much
audacity.
fear.
Oh, yes,
Yes, I
yes.
mean, way too much risk. Why would I do that? And so I did recognize that for what it was, because especially because I had my husband kind of in my ear telling me, like, you can do this. And I think in some ways I thought this is what he would tell himself. He could do this. Because as a
Interesting.
man, they just very little fear in those situations. Put
Yeah.
themselves out there. And I mean, this goes back to, I remember when I was the first an attorney starting out, and my first boss started to see that I was losing confidence. It was, a very hostile, aggressive litigation situation where I was dealing with opposing counsel on the other side who are, it's a litigious atmosphere. It's very adversarial. And unfortunately, the legal profession can be very adversarial, even when you're not doing litigation. And I will never forget, I had a moment where this attorney on the other side, we were in a deposition, and he brought me to tears. He was just belittling me, kind of going after me to get basically to my client, but it was felt like a personal attack. And I
Yeah.
remember I excused myself from the room, and I hurried out to go get my boss, my male boss. And I ran into his office crying, which was already, horribly embarrassing, right? Here I am crying, and I'm like, he's bullying me and I don't know how to respond, and I'm at the end of my rope. And he's like, you need to put on your armor and get out your samurai sword and go back in there. He's like, I'm not going in there for you. I will not do that. You need to have the confidence. Forget about what he's saying to you. Put your sword in your hands, put your armor on, and go back in there. And I remember that because it's so easy sometimes, I think, as a woman to lead from a sense of fear or not enough, or, just feeling like no matter what, you're not going to be able to do it the same way a guy can do it. And I don't think that's true ever, but I do think we're sort of conditioned to think that way. So breaking out of that mentality, after I had already gone on my own and starting to realize I could break through that mentality, shifted that perspective for sure.
Was it, do you think, because there was no backup that you had to say, all right, I'm going to have to armor up on my own. I'm going to have to give myself that note. I'm going to have to give myself that pep talk.
100%. I had to put on my armor and get the sword out because,
Yeah.
I could have looked for a job for longer. I could have stayed with it and tried to find something, but I also kind of knew deep down I wasn't willing to, I had done all this work, becoming a yoga instructor, meditating. I couldn't go back to a scenario where I was under constant stress and anxiety and feeling like it was a toxic place, or feeling like I needed an escape hatch all of the time. And so that really helped in my decision because it was realizing, like, I don't have to go back to that. I can create my own version of the story, but I am going to have to get out the sword because it's not an easy route from here. I mean, anytime you start your own business, as you know, there's so many different challenges than working for someone else, but so a lot of challenges, but it was a moment to armor up and take on the challenge.
Tell me if you agree or not. There's a different feeling, and I go back to the feeling in the body again, because that is such a thing that's lacking in all of us right now, is this listening to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But in your opinion, is there a difference between that proverbial armoring up for a company that you are working for, representing, versus armoring up for yourself? Because, you know, at least with my recollection, armoring up for the company being a quote unquote company gal, right?
Yeah.
Even that I questioned. Well, what armor do I put on? What do you need from me? What's my role? Am I don't want to threaten you if I go too bold.
Right.
How far am I allowed to go? This perceived allowance, right? And I admit, running my own show, the failures are mine, but the wins are mine. And that armoring up feels different. And actually, and this is why I really want to hear your input on is I am much bolder now. And it used to be, well, because I have to, there's nobody else to do it.
Right.
I have to fight my own fights here. But
Yeah.
it's a through line that makes sense now, where it's like, wait a minute, no, we're not going to do it this way. And let me tell you why. End of story.
Yeah.
Period. And it's a whole new version of myself that I'm like, "Oh, wow, she's new, and I kinda like her."
I like her. Yeah.
Is that did you have somewhat of that same experience, or what was your experience like with that, with your armor?
Yes, I would agree. I think at first it was feeling like I have to do this, right? I have to put the armor on and suit up because I have no one else now. It's me and
Yeah,
only me. And at first, I was, you have that fear of, okay, well, what if I have no clients? What if just nobody
right,
hires me, right? And after getting a few of my first clients and realizing it wasn't exactly the work that I was setting out to do, right? It wasn't aligned with the vision I had, but I was taking on work because I needed to take on work just to
right.
have the work to do. And I got to a point, I would say a few months ago, where, and I had my 1 year anniversary of my firm May 1st of this year. So yeah,
Bravo,
very, very
bravo.
excited.
Huge.
But even before I got to that 1 year mark, I started to realize I have the power, I have the decision into what type of work I take on, into what clients I say yes to, into how I build my schedule. How flexible am I? You know what? I At this point I have 2 young kids who still want me most
Yep,
of the time,
most of the time.
mostly. And so I said, you know what? I have the power to say, I'm not taking phone calls until 9 o'clock because I'm going to walk my daughter to school every day.
Yeah,
Because for as long as she wants me to walk her to school and pick her up, I will do it. And when I had that realization, like, this is my choice. And, owning your own business, it can feel, as you know, like at first you feel like, oh, there's going to be all this flexibility and autonomy. And there is autonomy and there can be flexibility, but you have to create these boundaries for yourself because no one is going to create them for you, right? When you're with a company, they will tell you what they expect of you and you follow in line. And suddenly there's no one there to tell you what to do. And I quickly figured out, I was giving away hour-long free consultations to people that I knew were never gonna hire me, right? Or I was taking on a project for half of the fee that I knew I could have charged at my company because I was desperate to just get the work. And at
right.
some point I said to myself, "No, we're not doing this anymore. I will not work for free." And I will not give away all of my work, And so starting to build the confidence in realizing the decision is mine to make. The choices are mine, and being confident enough to make that choice without fearing the consequence of it. That's when I knew I really had truly become a different version of myself. Being able to have that confidence in those moments that even at first 6 to 9 months of this job, I wasn't sure if it was still going to be the right fit. So it happened.
Well, and that's, I'm gonna use that silver lining analogy again, even though I know we all don't love it, but it's true because forced into a new chapter, even though it was the best thing for you,
Yeah.
it's a moment. It's a big, big moment. And it happens more and more now. I mean, you hear these layoffs going on, thousands and thousands of people at once. Whatever is happening in the job market is way above my pay grade. It's scary.
It is. Yeah.
And so what we're talking about here is so relevant to thousands of people that got no warning and perhaps were or are in the same position you were in to
Yeah.
say, well, actually I didn't love it anyway, or it had run its course. I'm grateful for it. There's a million
Yeah.
different versions of, yeah, but guess what? It's over. Now what? And it might even be, and again, going back to this term of silver lining, this really incredible collective moment of, okay, well, as per exactly what you're sharing with people, Renee, is who the hell am I? And
Right.
figure out who I want to be. Life is short. We are here for such a blink of an eye. Going back to this idea of what is happiness, right? Wrapping your identity up in this is what I do for a job. And well,
Yeah.
what about your kids remembering you as being happy and being present? So
Yeah.
those moments of, come to Jesus moment, it's a big deal, and that is where I would invite everybody to really get excited about whatever that hit was.
Yeah.
That is the end of a chapter and the beginning of a whole other story for yourself,
I know.
and you're highlighting it so beautifully. Now, I have a question for you, though,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna play devil's advocate a bit before we wrap up here because what you're sharing is profound, but you mentioned your husband, and he sounds like an incredibly great guy, a wonderful partner, and a supportive partner.
Yes.
What do we do when we do not have that? When we are not able to lean on a person, a community, right? I mean, there's a lot of nuance in this decision making
Yeah.
moment because if somebody A is in a job they don't like or B gets laid off, what then? What would you recommend? And what, when someone is there in that moment, A, how would you recommend them sort of resolving the fact that they might have to be in a company that they don't love for the next 2 years?
Yeah.
You know, how do they plan the steps when they're working 80, 90-hour weeks, sometimes 120-hour weeks, regardless of the job? How do they plan that mindfully without the support? And on the other end of that, if you are forced off the wheel and you don't have that support system, what would you say to these two versions of that same moment that you had found yourself in?
Yeah. That's a great question. And that's tough. That is a tough situation. I mean, I definitely had that support, which I do think is really important, and not everyone has that. And that is really tough. I think if you're in a situation where you're still at the company and you're not ready to make that move or pull the plug on your own or move to something else, really fighting for yourself in that moment where you can. Because I'll say this, my entire career, I think, and well known, right, that there's a pay gap, there's a pay equality gap between women and
Yep.
men. And it's real. And my entire career, I saw it firsthand. And even when I was leaving my company, my paralegal, who was an amazing, amazing person, she stayed on and she was not let go from the company. And she ended up taking on the role of multiple people. And this is happening a lot because you have these huge
Yeah.
layoffs, and the people that are left all of a sudden are doing the job of two people or three people
At
for the
least.
same, at least for the same pay. And I remember she called me really upset because she was just feeling completely overwhelmed, completely overworked. And I said, "You have to ask for a pay raise. You have to put in writing your worth. Write it down, like, for yourself. What are your values? And what is your worth to this company? What are you doing? What have you done for them this past year? What have you helped them do to succeed?" And convert that into a dollar amount that you're going to go ask for because you deserve it. And that was really, really hard for her to even approach the question with the CEO who was still there to say, "I believe I'm worth more. I deserve more." And I think we're, again, as women, conditioned to just take what we get and sit in the corner and be quiet until someone,
Yep.
calls on us. And it's easy to play that role and forget that you have to advocate for yourself no matter what. And especially if you're in a situation where there's been layoffs and you are left, and maybe half your team is gone, maybe a lot of the team is gone, and you're still there, and maybe you're not happy still being there. What can you do to be an advocate for yourself in that moment, because maybe it will catapult you into a completely different position in the company. Or maybe you'll realize in that moment that, your worth is more than that company and you do need to move on. And, I will say, like, having a support system, even if you can find an online community of people that are going through something that you're going through, I have the advantage of living in a small town. And in a lot of ways, it can be, there's disadvantages to being in a small town, right? But the advantage is a community that is there for you. And my mom, who, was retired, has been retired for some time now, has really struggled to find a community in her, and she was retired kind of forced out of her job. So I will say it was not a retirement that she had planned for, but she found herself suddenly retired and kind of felt lost, didn't know really where to go, and started finding online communities that she could find support in. She collects sea glass, and she found, if you think it is there, right? She found a
Right.
community of people her age that collect sea glass wherever they go. And
That's
so
cool.
finding, it was really cool. It was very different. And so I would just say finding a community, whether it be online, maybe there's a walking group you can join of people that like walk together and talk about, their issues. But thinking about, having some support wherever you can find it, and then advocating for yourself. So important to, even if you don't have, that other partner there advocating for you. I think being your own advocate is the most important thing anyway, because sometimes that other person might just be noise. If you don't truly believe that you can accomplish that next step, even if someone else tells you you can, it's not going to resonate. It will not be that moment for you unless you truly believe that it is for yourself. And so, yes, it was wonderful to have my husband supporting me, but I still had to have that resolve on my own.
Well, and you nailed it. That's so well said, and so eloquently said, because something that I think everyone has to experience for themselves in the working world is that, in a way, it's very Darwinistic. It is survival of the fittest. I have a whole opinion on the way we call work a family. I think that is
Oh,
a
you and
whole
my husband both.
manipulation.
Oh, he
Well,
hates that term.
we're going to chat because it is psychological manipulation.
Yeah,
That's a topic for another time. But
sure.
that, it's set up in a way that really kind of reduces your autonomy in decision making, and
Okay.
women especially.
Yes.
I agree with you 1000. We know this. This
Sure.
studied fact. So it's really having that moment frozen in time where you understand that you do have more power than you think you do. You can say anything you want if you choose your words correctly, right? There's never a total finite block. There's always, this is a challenge, what am I going to do about it? And
Right.
your story highlights that in such a beautiful way of choice.
Thank
And
you.
when you're forced into making a choice, you have the choice to either spiral in, "Oh, no, what now?"
Mm,
Or the decision that you made is to really assess it for what it is and find that opportunity.
yes.
I don't know, I think more people need to listen to the version that you took on, because even listening to it, it's not as scary as I listened to you.
Yeah.
Um, it's
And
not as
finding your
scary.
voice. Yeah. I mean,
It's raising your
it can be
voice.
hard to find your voice sometimes, but it once you do, it will really shift the mindset, because I think we are so akin to waiting for someone else to tell us what we're worth, and being able to know and truly value what you're worth without the outside world reaffirming it for you. It's hard. So hard to do, but once you can start to find that person inside of you and really take that on as your own challenge and kind of push out the noise from outside, that was for me a big moment.
Well, and it's funny that you mention, you're, again, this just goes to show and showcase how astute you are in this decision making process when there are big decisions to be made. Because, again, going back to just a quick exercise that I work with my clients on, this same thing that you do, writing the new instruction, right?
Yes.
That old instruction has been, it's a condition.
Yeah.
And even an old instruction of, let's say, women in the workforce, right? Stay
Yeah.
quiet, work hard, wait to be seen,
Yes.
even this wait to be spoken to. Sometime, I mean, really, I'm not
Oh, no.
overdoing it, right?
Still happens.
It still happens. And whether we're cognizant of it or not, it's so profound, right? This writing it down, update the instruction, update the rewiring from brain to body. One sentence, even to say, this is a genuine rewrite, it's not an affirmation. I make myself visible because my work deserves to be known.
I love
Period.
that. I love that. Yeah.
So, as we wrap up today, you have dropped so many vital, and in real time moments of this is really happening. You're a bit ahead of the curve, a year or two in front of people. And now you're speaking to people who are really in the position you were in just a short time ago. What would be a closing sort of message that you would want to relay to women who are currently maybe feeling that, okay, I might be next here?
That's a great question. I want to say, I think that everyone has their own journey, of course, but
Yeah.
really finding that part of you, wherever it is, and thinking about it was not my words, my therapist said to me, but, thinking about what version of yourself do you want the world to know? Is it going to
Yeah.
be the version of, I'm not good enough? This is my only identity. I don't know where to move on from here. I'm in a pity state. I'm feeling shameful. I have all of these things. Or is it another version of yourself, a version that is true to yourself, that sees the value inside of you, whatever that moment is, finding that version of yourself that can carry you forward, I think is the most important step that I took. And I think for a lot of people, that is a really key part of just finding that next part of your journey, because it isn't going to be, it's never easy. I mean, even owning your own business is, there's so many challenges regardless of what path you take. And for some people, they may say, I don't want to own my own business. Like, I have no desire.
Right.
And that's
Fair.
absolutely fair. I mean, but being able to advocate yourself and find that version of yourself, even if you are still working for someone else at a company, trying to figure out your next step. Ultimately, like, do you want that identity that you have been clinging to for so long, or do you want to shed that identity and find that version that is more true to you? So that's what I would say to everyone.
What a way to wrap, because you're really explaining to people how to give permission to themselves to receive the new opportunity.
Yes. Whatever
And
it might
at the
be.
whatever it might be, right? And I love, what a great way to end this today, Renee, because it's true. Everything's hard, guys. Everything's hard. Life is hard. Life is unjust. It's unfair. Whatever road you go, you're going to have to put in sweat equity.
Yes.
So you might as well do what it is that you feel called to do. Try it. Go where you're appreciated. Find that place that does not give you that chronic
Pain.
need to armor up and be in pain, right? That, find your alignment.
Yeah.
You're going to work hard no matter what. Might as well make it worth the effort for yourself, right?
Yes.
So the exit, however it comes, it's not the end of the story. It's the first sentence of the real story.
I love that. Oh, I love that, Stephanie. That's so good.
Well, I love you, Renee. This has
I love you
been
too.
a joy. This is my one thing about tech. I wish I could reach my hands
Oh, and
into.
hug you.
Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure working with you and connecting. I mean, you're just such a bright light. So
Likewise,
thank you.
really. And like we're saying and sharing, and thank you for your vulnerability and your openness and your eloquence and your elegance in this process, because it's a big one and it's happening.
Yeah.
And we need to be okay to talk about it. And with these conversations, especially being gifted the opportunity to speak with someone like you, yeah, it makes things less scary. And guess what, folks? There is community out there. People are going through the same thing. Don't isolate yourself.
Yes.
Talk, and the answer will come when you're open to receive it. Just like Renee, look at that. The yoga opportunity came as sort of a stepping stone to a whole new career and incredible entrepreneurship. Like, just listen and receive, and don't let that fear swallow you up. So,
Oh,
Renee Coover,
thank you,
unbelievable
Stephanie. Thank
joy.
you for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I'm sure this will be one of several times we will chat. This
I
is
hope
not the
so.
end. This
I
is
hope
just the
so.
beginning.
I love it.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Bye.